They say life slows down after 70. Date for writhing becomes routine, softer, quieter, predictable. But what happened to me that summer night shattered every rule I thought I understood about motherhood, aging, and emotional boundaries. And it all started innocently with a knock on my door and a simple, "Mom, can we talk?" Before I begin, I want to ask you, from where are you watching this story tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. I always love hearing where you're joining me from. Now let me Takeyo back to a night that I still think about every day. My name is Catherine. I'm 71 years old, widowed, and living in the same quiet neighborhood in upstate New York where I raised my son Tivor. We used to be a family of 3. Me, Tyler, and my late husband, Gerald. Gerald passed away 6 years ago, after a long illness. And since then, well, I guess you could say my life has been echo of what it once was. Tyler's my only son. He's 22 now, a gentle soul, tall, brown-haired, bookish, one of those young men who's kind to strangers and still opens doors for women. He's always had a deep heart, though I don't think he realizes just how deep. After college he moved back in with me for a while to get his feet on the ground. I didn't mind. Having him in the house again brought a flicker of warmth to rooms that had been too still for too long. That night, it was just after midnight. I'd made myself a cup of chamomile tea and was curled up in my favorite armchair by the window, flipping through a worn paperback. The house was silent, except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I was just about to head to bed when I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. "Mom." Tyler's voice came through low and hesitant. "Are you awake?" Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "Yes, sweetheart, come in." He stepped into the room wearing sweatpants and a shirt, barefoot, his dark hair a little messy, like he'd been lying in bed, tunable to sleep. He looked unsure, vulnerable. My mother's instinct kicked in immediately. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting the book aside. He lingered by the doorframe door, finally walking in and sitting down on the edge of my bed. He didn't look at me at first. "I don't know how to say this," he murmured. "Well, start with anything," I said softly. "Whatever it is, I'm here." He glanced ATM, then his eyes deepened, searching, and then he said something that both unsettled and moved me. "You've always been the one to take care of me. But lately, I've been wondering who's taking care of you." I stared at him, heart thudding. "I do okay," I replied with a small smile. "I manage." "You shouldn't have to just manage," he said, his voice suddenly strong. "You gave your whole life to me and Dad, and now you're just here alone." Every night, I felt something sting behind my eyes. I hadn't expected this. Not from him, not like this. "I'm not complaining," I said. "This is what life is at this stage, and besides shaving your hair, but you're lonely," he interrupted, his voice low. "I see it, I feel it." There was a long silence after that. I didn't know what to say. It felt like he was looking through me, seeing past their hurt smiles and the quiet strength I wore like armor every day. "I just wish," he said slowly, "you'd let me better for you. The way you've always been there for me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. My son had grown into Amon, and somehow I hadn't noticed until this very moment. The way his voice held weight, the way he sat with me insolence instead of rushing to fill it, the way he looked at me, not with childish need, but with concern, maybe even care deeper than I couldn't name. "It's hard," I whispered, "letting Simeon care for you when you've spent whole life doing the caring." He reached over then, gently taking my hand. His fingers were warm, his grip steady. "I know," he said, "but maybe you didn't have to do it alone anymore." The intimacy of the moment lingered, heavier than the late summer air drifting through the open window. It looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man, thoughtful, patient, capable of understanding feelings I had spent years locking away. We sat there in silence, fingers stillessly intertwined. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't even know what would wanted to come next. But I knew that something had shifted. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, and that more than anything scared me. Because when you've lived most of your life in control, learning how to accept care, especially from your own child, feels like surrendering a piece of yourself. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe letting go was the only way to finally feel alive again. And Tyler, he wasn't letting go of my not yet. That night, after Tyler left my room, I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my hand still tingling where Head held it. His words echoed in Mimid. Not just the words, but the way Head said them, like he meant every syllable, like he'd been holding them in for a long time. It's strange, isn't it? You raise Occult, you pour yourself into them, feed them, teach them, worry about them, and then one day they'd look at you like you're the one who needs saving. It turns everything upside down. I didn't know how to process it, but I knew something had shifted between us, quietly, subtly, but it was there. The next morning, I tried to go about my day as usual. I busied myself in the kitchen making a full breakfast even though I didn't have the appetite. Eggs, toast, a few slices of peach. Tyler came in, still a little sleepy, his hair damp from a shower. He didn't say much at first, just sat across from me at the table. We ate in a kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, more like thoughtful. Every now and then I catch him watching me, not staring, not obvious, just a quiet glance, here and there. It was almost like he was waiting to see if I'd bring up what had happened the night before, but I didn't, I couldn't, I didn't know how. You've all got paint on your hands, he finalized, nodding to the tiny streak of white near my thumb. I looked down and laughed softly. I touched up the trim by the porch. It's been bothering me all week. You could have asked me to do it, he said. I could have, I replied, but old habits die hard. He smiled, but there was something behind it, a kind of quiet frustration, or maybe concern. That afternoon, I went out back to the garden. Working with my hands helps clear my head, and lately my head had been a storm. I knelt in the dirt, pruning the tomato plants, humming to myself when I heard footsteps behind me. You always come out here when you need space, Kyler said gently. I looked over my shoulder at him, surprised. How do you know that? I've been you for years, Mom. I know you said things. He crouched down beside me, picking at a weed near the mint leaves. We sat like that for a while, just tending the garden like two people who had nothing to prove to one another. I meant what I said last night, he added. I want to be there for you. I know, I said quietly. It's not just that I think you need some. I want to understand you not just as my mother, but as a person, a woman. His words caught me off guard. I stood up quickly, brushing my hands on my pants, trying to hide the way my heart started racing. It was too much, too direct. Tyler, I appreciate it. I really do. Booty your mother. He stood up. His expression was calm, but there was something intense in his eyes. I know who you are, Mom. That's exactly why I'm saying this. I've seen you take care of everyone. I've seen how you laugh when you're tired. How you hide your sadness behind chores. How you talk to Dad's picture when you think I'm not listening. I just want you to have someone who sees all of that, who doesn't look away. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. My eyes stung. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was fine, that I didn't eat anything, but it wouldn't have been true that night. I found myself lingering outside his door before bed, just standing there in the hallway like I was 16 again, unsure of what I was feeling. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Booty didn't knock. Instead, I walked away, but something had changed. A door had opened between us inside me, and I knew it wouldn't stay closed for long. The following evening, after dinner, we sat in the living room watching an old film, one of those classics with slow dialogue and dramatic music. Tyler sat on the other end of the couch at first, but as the movie went on, Webbeth shifted. Somehow, without speaking, the space between us disappeared. His arm draped over the back of the couch. My shoulder barely touched his. It wasn't about the movie. Neither of us was really watching. It was about the way Thieselin spoke louder than words, the way I felt my breath hitch when his hand brushed against mine. Not an accident, not this time. I didn't move away. I didn't want to. The moment was thick with something unspoken, a feeling neither of us dared to name, but it raced there in the air between our fingers, in the steady rhythm of his breathing. In the way his eyes lingered on mine, when the movie ended and the screen faded to black, and I knew this wasn't about pity, this wasn't about loneliness, this was something deeper, more complicated, and more honest than anything I felt in years. He didn't say anything that night when we finally said goodnight, but I saw it in his eyes, and I'm Saraya saw it in mine. Something had begun, something neither us fully understood, but neither of us wanted to stop. The days that followed felt like walking a line I didn't know I'd ever find myself balancing on. Tyler didn't speak of that night on the couch, and neither did I, but it was there between us. Not Awkward, not shameful, just present, like a shared memory we were still learning how to hold. It was a warm Friday evening when things shifted again. More noticeably this time, the house had that late summer stillness where even the wind seemed. I was folding laundry in the living room, towels, shirts, a few of Tyler's things he'd left in the dryer. I'd always done little things for him. It made me feel needed, like I still had a purpose. He came in quietly, freshly showered, smelling faintly of soap and cedar. He watched me for a moment without speaking, then sat on the edge of the couch and picked up a towel to help. "You don't have to do that," I said without looking up. "I know," he replied softly, "but I want to." We folded in silence for a bit until he broke it. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Have you ever thought about starting over? Like really starting over?" I glanced at him, puzzled at my odds. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess that's part of why I placed the folded shirt down and leaned back slightly, watching his hands move slowly. "There are moments," I admitted, "quitones usually, where I think about what life might have been if I'd made different choices, if I hadn't buried myself so fully into being a wife and mother. But then I feel selfish for even thinking it." "You're not selfish," he said gently but firmly. "You're just human." He looked at me then, eyes locking onto me, and for the first time, I didn't look away. "I don't see you as just my mom," he said, voice low, steady. "I see a woman who gave up so much and still stands strong, but I also see someone who's forgotten you to let herself be seen." That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. He stood then, holding one of his shirts and came to where I sat. He knelt carefully, placing the folded shirt on the table before looking up at me. "Can I ask something else?" I nodded, heart beating faster. "Would it be wrong if I said I don't want you to be alone anymore? That maybe the person who could make you feel alive again isn't far away?" My breath caught. There it was. The quiet storm I'd been feeling brewing ever since that night by the garden. Only now, it wasn't subtle. He had said it out loud. The wall that had always existed between mother and son, the unspoken rules, was being questioned gently but unmistakably. I felt everything at once. Fear, guilt, longing, a wild swirl of emotion I hadn't let myself feel in decades. "Tyler," I whispered, "you don't know what you're saying." "I do," he said calmly. "I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think you have too." I didn't respond. I couldn't. He reached up slowly, his fingers lightly brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was so delicate, so unassuming. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just sat there breathing, feeling alive. "I would never do anything to hurt you," he said. "You mean too much to me." "No," I said, and my voice cracked. The silence stretched between us. His hand lowered, not forced, not rushed. There was no pressure, no demands, just presence, warmth, closeness. And in that quiet space, I realized it's something that scared me. I hadn't felt seen, truly seen, in years. Not as Amathar, not as a woman, not as anything more than someone passing through the last chapters of her life. But Tyler, he saw me, and more than that, whatever this was becoming, it wasn't born from confusion or impulse. It was slow, emotional, and strangely comforting. That night, I found myself standing at his doorway again. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to speak, maybe I wanted to run, but could knock. The door opened and there was, as if he'd been waiting, hadn't say anything. He simply stepped aside and I stepped in. We didn't talk much that night. Words weren't. We sat on his bed side by side, a blanket draped over our laps, listening to music on low volume, old jazz, the kind Gerald used to love, and yet, the moment didn't feel haunted by memory. It felt new, tender, full of things, unsaid, but not hidden. Ty leaned his head lightly against mine, and I let my hand rest on his knee. Not in fear, not in confusion, just in peace. We stayed like that until the sky turned a pale gray. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I remember thinking, this wasn't how I imagined healing would look. But maybe that's the thing about healing. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places, even from the arms of someone you thought you were meant to protect, not one who would end up protecting you. The next morning came slowly. Like the world wasn't quite ready to wake. Pale sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and unintrusive, casting gentlines across the floor. I opened my eyes before Tyler did. He was still beside, breathing slow, steady, one hand resting just a few inches from mine. I didn't move. I watched him for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. It wasn't regret. It wasn't confusion. For anything, it was calm. A kind of deep, quiet understanding that I hadn't allowed myself in years, and something else, to a strange relief, like I'd finally let go of holding myself together so tightly. He stirred, eventually opening his eyes to find mine already on him. There was no startle, no panic. He simply smiled, warm and honest, and whispered, "Good morning." I didn't know what to say back, so I just smiled in return. We stayed like that for a while, wordless, wrapped in the moment. Eventually, I sat up, smoothing my hair, looking around the room that was still filled with his things, books stacked in unaventoys, an old guitar he barely played on anymore, sneakers near the dresser. It was such a contrast to my own bedroom, always neat, always untouched. He sat up beside me. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "I am." There were no rules for what we were stepping into, no guidebook, but in thought moment, I wasn't afraid. Whatever we're building was happening softly without force, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to label it. We went about the day, quietly, but together. Breakfast in the kitchen, side by side, washing dishes, watering the garden. A rhythm was forming, not new exactly, but different, intentional. That afternoon, we sat on the back porch. The breeze moved through the window, and Tyler was reading aloud, from a book we both liked, something we hadn't done since he was a child. He stopped mid-sentence, lowered the book, and turned to me. "I meant everything I said, that night, about not wanting you to feel alone. I meant high size. I know. I don't want this to be something you'll feel ashamed of," he said carefully. "Whatever this is, it's real to me." I felt the lump rise in my throat. I reached out and took his hand. It wasn't about roles anymore. It wasn't about expectations. It was about connection, raw, real, emotional. Two people who had both lost something, who had both been trying in different ways to fill the same hollow space. Later that week, we took a walk through the woods, near the edge of town, a path hadn't visited in years. Gerald and I used to walk when we were younger, and yet walking it with Tyler didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like something entirely its own, gentle, healing. He held my hand most of the way, not possessively, just there, a comfort. A grounding dot. At one point we stopped near a clearing where wildflowers had taken over, swaying gently in the wind. He turned to Tom then, brushing his thumb across the back of my hand. "Do you think people will understand?" he asked. I looked out across the field. People don't understand a lot of things. They'd look with their eyes, not their hearts. "But do you understand it?" he asked it quieter now. I looked at him, really looked at the kindness in his face, the vulnerability, the quiet strength that had been growing inside him without me even noticing. "Yes," I said softly, "I do." That night, we didn't sit in separate rooms. We shared space emotionally, physically, not in ways that needed explanation. The way our conversations linked, our touches became more natural. I felt cherished, not as someone fragile, not as someone in need of pity, but as someone who had finally stopped hiding. And I realized something else. Tyler hadn't just changed my life by showing me love. He'd reminded me that I was still capable of feeling it, of accepting it, of choosing it. He brought me back to myself, not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman who had nearly forgotten that her heart could still want, still hope, still bloom, and somehow in the softest way possible, he gave me back a life I thought was already over. Though, no, I didn't expect any of this. I never imagined that helping my son would end up healing me, too. But that's the thing about love. Real, quiet, honest love. It doesn't always arrive the way you think it will. Sometimes it comes from someone who's been beside you all along. And sometimes the most unexpected love is the one that finally makes you feel